guys, Jenny here from the Dover Cheese Shop in Port Dover. Do you have an event coming up? We do specialty cheese trays, also large grazing tables. Looking for a special gift for somebody? We also do amazing gift baskets. You can order them online at dovercheese.com. Check us out sometime. We're at 307 Main Street. We carry over 150 cheeses. Enjoy the podcast.
Dave Scott, Hub Media. It's a small town business life podcast with Katie Sinkowski from Katie Sinkowski Design. I got that right. Our sponsor is Dover Cheese. Jenny and the staff always do a great job there, and I want to thank them for always being a part of this podcast, which is really cool, and we always have a lot of fun. But Katie, today, you and I go way back in Port Dover. We both grew up there and have our roots there, and we're going to talk about a little bit about everything, but I want to start with your business. I mean, you got this going in, 2018, I want to say?
Yep.
So tell me about it.
So I started graphic design as a job in 2004, something like that. So out of school, and I worked for publishing. I worked for government, Burlington, City of Burlington, Norfolk County, and then in 2018, after I'd had my second child, I decided that just things kind of shifted for me, and the idea of having my own business just kind of made a bit more sense. So I went out on my own. I'd always kind of freelanced a little bit here and there on the side. So I decided I felt like I had enough years in the industry to kind of help me with running my own business. I feel like if I had done it sooner, some of the things that I learned along the way maybe wouldn't have, it helped me. Right. So yeah, I went out on my own and have been doing it ever since.
What is design always been in your life? Is that like when you were young, did you know this is a field you were considering?
Yeah. So my dad, he liked to do like pencil sketches, actually at the Erie Beach. I think they still have them up, about like all the boats and the arbor and stuff, right? All the old pictures of Dover. So I remember as a kid, he would show me, we'd be coloring in my coloring book, and I wouldn't just color it like willy nilly. It would be like, he'd show me how to shade, and I would take my time and be really, but I think it was in grade 9, I did a project where we had to replicate different cartoons, and I realized that I could really draw because I drew all of them exactly as they were. And I was like, oh, I have more of a skill for this than I thought I did. And so then in high school, I really started to explore art. And then at the end of high school, it was a toss-up between like psychology, sociology, and graphic design, and I decided to go in and get more of the trade, and started right away.
Wow, that's and going back to your younger years, obviously you were working at the family business at Stoney's, and you were surrounded by logos, you were surrounded by branding, right, all the time. Yes. And you were surrounded by people. So if you don't mind touching base on that a little bit, just how did that help you in the long run, going back to the family business?
I think that growing up in a family business, like both my grandfather and my uncle and my dad, and my sister, we were all working together. I definitely learned from all of them, like, to be hardworking, just the importance of customer service with all the people coming in, different trades coming in, learning about all the different trades that exist and how people can have sort of specific niches. And I think I learned a lot about community. I learned a lot about, just a lot about people skills, right? So yeah. I think that when I went out on my own as a business owner, it helped. Those years helped me because I started working at the store when I was very little, pricing hockey tape and whatever else in the back. But we had a lot of responsibility, both my sister and I, growing up in the store. And I'm thankful to my family for that, because I think it taught me a lot of things really young.
I think, when you're really young, I remember that just my uncle's restaurant too. I was super shy when I started there. Like you probably were, you and your sister probably were too, right? And all of a sudden you kind of blossom, you learn. It's funny what happens to you, that metamorphosis where you're all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, I know what this person usually wants, or how to handle this customer, right? And I think I think it's becoming a lost art, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. I think that customer service has gone like a lot of times by the wayside. And I think that like how many people go to Stoney's because they know that they've got everything, and like that's something that my grandpa worked and my uncle worked very hard at keeping that reputation, right? And being helpful and just so there was something that you said that I wanted to go back to, and I can't think of
yeah, it was just about how it was a lost art and how you come out of your shell, right? When you're doing all that.
Well, and I think that one of the things I learned from them too was even just having small talk with people, right? Like whether it's something easy, like talking about the weather or whatever, right? But like I was definitely a shy kid. And I think that if young me could see what I'm able to do now, like talking to people or even doing something like this, right? Where you have to open up and talk about what you do. And like, no way, like the idea of like speeches and stuff as a kid were like terrifying. Right. So the fact that now I can run my own business and talk to people and figure out who they are and what they do. And like that's,
Isn't that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things I found in business is having those conversations with potential clients, or if I'm writing a story, you become part of that. You get involved in their life and you see where they're at, right? And I think, and we don't take the time to do that much anymore either. And I think that's one of the things that, when I see, and I've talked to you about this before, is like when I see your ads, they're very comforting. They're very nice and nurturing, and they're clean. And I think that sort of is a reflection on you, because that sort of tells me who you are as a person. And I think when you go into a client's, they may want to hire you. I think, do you do that? Do you sort of look at that person and everything? Take that in?
Yeah, my goal, especially when it comes to branding, whether it's logo design or an ad or whatever, like some sort of promotional marketing piece, my goal is to reflect who they are, right? Like I'm not designing for me, I'm designing for them. And I want to show like what makes them unique, or what they offer to their clients or their service or whatever it is that they're offering. So that people, it's an ad or a brand speaks on their behalf when they're not there, right? So you want to make sure that it reflects them as best you can. So I definitely take a lot of time. Like for example, with branding, I have a whole process of how I get to even that first draft of a design, right? So it's all about the questions that I ask them. Sometimes they've never really even thought about, like, and they get to know themselves. I told you this before, like I've had people call me a brand therapist, right? Because like I really want to get to know them and and help reflect who they are, right? So
well, I think I read too on your website, one of the comments was that you have a soft approach, and I like that. I thought that was really. Can you explain that a little bit? I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I think that again, maybe it's my interest in like the psychology, sociology world, but I feel like getting to know people and making them feel comfortable and opening them up, and like by no means, like it's not like they're sitting on the couch, really, but
well, tell
getting
me.
tell me about
Tell me about your design.
But yeah, letting them feel comfortable, and again, going back to that customer service piece of people coming in the store, and just, I don't know, and growing up in a small community, everybody knows. Well, when we were growing up, like everybody knew everybody, and that's just always been an important piece to me. It's like as an artist or as a designer, like that's my goal, is to get to know you. And I don't know, like I've walked away with a lot of friends that are clients, right? So like it's
it the
nice
curiosity?
to
I gotta ask, is it the curiosity? Like, if I'm going to do a story, I'm really curious. Okay, what makes this person tick? Why do they think this way? Like, do you take that path too?
Yeah, I would say that my curiosity comes more from, am I going to be able to, or not am I going to be able to? How do I take everything that they're telling me and put it into this representation, and I want to nail it, right? Like I want to get it right for them, and like it's that I find satisfaction in their their satisfaction, or that, like, if they have that aha moment of
Yeah.
like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted, or that represents me so well, like that part. So it's curiosity as much as it is like, I just feel so much like gratitude or whatever, of just like feeling, I don't know,
It's
just,
well, it's like a form of empathy, really. Like, because you're
yeah,
taking on some of that feeling of what they're doing in their business. I know I've had pieces that I've written about other folks, and I've had somebody, I've had family come up to me of that person and say, "You nailed it." And like, that's the best feeling, because you
yeah,
want to be true to yourself, to the story. And it's the same thing when you're branding something, or when you're telling someone's story through a logo, or through, any any other art form that you're using. But I think that's so critical.
yeah. Well, and I think I've been very lucky to work with, like, 99.9% of the people I've worked with have been amazing people to
Yeah.
work with. And just like, obviously in any business, there's going to be the odd time that,
Yeah.
something,
Doesn't work.
like, people just, what, like, something didn't work out, or nature of people. But I think that, like, I feel lucky that I get to work with so many different businesses and so many different, or services, and meet some really cool people along the
Yeah.
way, and just very different things too, right? Like, one of the benefits to not working for an employer is that I can go out and network, and meet somebody for a business that I've never had the chance to work for before. And part of getting to know, like, I'm getting to know them, but I also get to learn all these things about all these different types of businesses.
Businesses.
And again, maybe that's from working at the store where, like, I might not be able to fix a toilet, but I can probably give you all the pieces that you
They
need
will
for
get
it,
it
right?
done.
So, so again, I might not, like, be able to speak on that business's behalf, but I could say, hey, you know what? I know someone who does that, and you can get in touch with them, which is what I try to do on my socials too, right? Is like steer people in
It's
directions of people that are doing things.
Yeah, and it's like, what, you're holding their dream in your hands, right?
Mhm.
Like, you see that energy that they've got. They really want this to work, and then you're able to go, okay, I can create something that's fits. Doesn't really fit, but makes, it brings out what you're trying to see in that company.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool, right? And talk
Yeah.
about some of the work you've done, because I know that you're all over the place. Like, you've did
Yes.
transport trucks, you did logos, you did ads. Like, talk a little bit about what you actually do.
Okay. Um, so yes, I've definitely done, like, the industries for me range literally, like, it's far on the spectrum of everything that you can imagine. Like you said, transport trucks, even breweries, salons, bakeries, restaurants. Uh, it's literally
Cheese shops. You forgot cheese shops.
She said, yeah. Actually, no, I didn't do Jenny's logo, but
Oh,
I
no,
do
but you
all,
do your
yes,
ads. Yeah.
yes, I do all her marketing
Look at
pieces
that. We
and
even
stuff. So,
worked it in halfway through the podcast, Jenny. Look at that.
yeah.
Dover cheese. She'll love
And
that.
they are wonderful to work with.
But
I've
but
always
and
enjoyed working with Jenny.
but she's got so much energy, right? When you make
Yes.
her ads, you probably take that into consideration, right?
Well, and Jenny the nice thing about some of the people that I work with, and Jenny is a good example of this, is that they understand the importance
Ah,
of consistency
yes.
and the brand, right? So she wants to say, if it's that she wants to change the look to have more people in the ads, because she wants to get that feeling of, people being connected and stuff,
Yeah,
right? Versus just having the product,
right.
which gives you a different feeling, right? So it's nice when working with someone like that, because they get what you're trying to achieve too, and so you take out the piece of um, them having to learn that, I guess, right? Like,
Well,
or understand it.
I think a lot of businesses, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, don't understand the value of marketing,
Yeah,
right?
100%. Yeah. Or the consistency part
Right.
of it, right? That, like, your brand speaks on your behalf when you're not there. So if people can recognize that consistency, that they see the messaging is the same, or like whatever the mood, or like the
The
pictures
feel.
have the same, yeah, like the feel has to be, and obviously, like, the fonts, the colors, like all that stuff and all those things also evoke certain, like, colors and font choices evoke certain emotions too, right? So
Right.
if you want a soft ad, you're not going to use a really big, aggressive, bold font that like screams in their face, they're all in caps and stuff, right? So again, Jenny gets all that marketing piece, which is nice. And a lot of people will, if they see it, they understand it, but sometimes they have to see it to understand it, right? So but I'm lucky that I work with a lot of people that do understand that.
I remember years ago, I was dropping off the magazine in Tim Hortons in Cayuga, the hub. And I remember staying, I was like, okay, I gotta grab a coffee. It's a long drive back, blah, blah, blah. And I set the magazines down and I heard the person behind me opening the magazine. And it was really funny because I heard him go, oh, we haven't been there in a long time. And it was the Erie Beach ad, right? Because again, so far removed, but it was that by association, putting it back in their mind to remind them that this is something they enjoy and they should go back there. And it's just the power of marketing, right? The power of that little ad, just saying, hey, don't forget about us, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of neat when those things occur. And you probably, both of us in this field, we get to see those things once in a while. And it's kind of fun when you realize the value and how your tools can help that company grow.
Yeah. Well, and it's like sometimes people don't realize even that they've recognized a brand. Like I always use National Geographic as an example. You could see a little yellow square in the bottom corner of the TV and know you're on the National Geographic channel because that yellow border, and some people might not know this, like younger generation might not know that yellow border comes from the yellow border that was around the magazine cover
forever,
for years, right? So like there's those things, or even Netflix having that sound that comes on, right?
Yep.
Like that's all part of a brand strategy to like, you recognize that sound, Netflix is on, like whatever, right? So branding is not done willy-nilly. It's done with intention usually, right? So
It's the intent.
I think, so I think
and
that's
too, go ahead.
It's okay.
I think too, because I think the magazine's been going 19 years now. Nice. And one of the things last year I really encouraged my son, who helps do a lot of the design work. I'm like, I can't, and this is, you might not agree with me on this. I'm kind of curious now to see what you think. It's like, I want every month, I want the hub logo to be different because I want something different to catch if the picture doesn't catch them on the cover, I want the logo to. So I want them to always think that, oh, it's a new one. Right. Okay. So I was trying to look at that from a different point of view because I felt that we were way too consistent. Like it was always the same. And I'm like, I'm just tired of it. I need to see something. I want a client that picks that up to go, oh, what's this? This is different again, right? Why are they doing this? And I wondered, I know that I think it's consistent because the name always stays the same, but the font might change. And we don't, if I feel like it's a tough cover, then it might be like if it's a big fire pit or something, then I want the logo to be more hardcore. But if it's willows or something, let's soften it up. Let's make it fit with those images. And I don't think a lot of businesses understand why we do those things or how important that is.
I would say as long as there's like consistency somehow, right? So there still should be something that people pick it up and recognize it. And even with the logo, if there's something that you're like, there's times where I've created multiple versions of a brand, right? So it's like, this is more what you would use if it's, if it's like a sticker on something versus on a signage, right? But there's usually still something that ties them together where it's some sort of element, or like if it's the shape of it or an element that's included in it or something.
Right? It's baked in. They already know the product. You're just trying to see if you can get a few more readers, a few different readers, maybe to pick it up, right? To say, oh, and I always find that that's interesting too, is that, like you said, if the consistency is critical, folks. Like if you're starting a business, this is the one thing I think you and I can both agree on is like, be consistent as heck. Because once they realize that you're not going away and you're here to stay, they want to come and play. So it's kind of fun that way.
Well, and rebranding is a big thing that I do as well, right? Which is kind of a whole other, it's similar, but it has a different, you have to kind of like a different lens on it, right? So kind of going along with the same thing, I find that when somebody's ready to rebrand, whether it's that they've, their look is outdated or they feel it's outdated, or they just want a fresh new look, or they've incorporated some other service into what they're doing and it just doesn't reflect it enough anymore. I find that you either do a complete, 180 away from what you were doing, Or again, I find some way to bring in something from the existing brand. Again, John Deere is a great example of how you can watch a logo evolve over time. And I always use them as an example, because if you go back to like the early ones, it's a very like detailed illustration versus like the abstract deer that sometimes doesn't even say John Deere.
They
So
just
it's like,
recognize the color schemes.
yeah, the yellow and the green, and that, yeah, like that you either, yeah, you find some way, like the deer is still there,
Yeah.
right? So it's like the deer has just evolved its style, right? But yeah, sometimes it's that, like, you find what wasn't working about your brand and you learn from that. Or but like all of these things um are the reason why I think that people like me still exist versus like the AI and the Fiverr logos out there, right? So
Well, yeah, because you're putting the time into it and you're understanding the person that's behind it or the people that's behind it. And I think that's critical.
yeah.
I agree 100%. And I think it's really important that people see. I'm curious now, because you brought up rebranding. I kind of want to go down there. Is
Mhm.
that something you see that companies should be doing every 10 years? Like, I know there's no scale to it, but you do see logos that get outdated pretty quick anymore.
I try to I try to brand with in mind that someone shouldn't have to rebrand.
I
Like,
got
yeah, definitely,
you.
like, you would think at least 10 years should get you, but like
Yeah.
fonts obviously are a sign of time, so it doesn't
Yeah.
really matter. You can, if you pick a super trendy font that's like this year's font, then yeah, you're likely going to end up feeling it's outdated even quicker. But I think design will always have, it'll always have a bit of a shelf life. Like you can look at
Yeah.
logos from the 70s and know that those color schemes were just like, that was the popular,
The
like
bright
the browns
orange.
and yeah, orange, yellow, brown, all that, right? And those are the things that if you're trying to create something vintage now, you go back to
Yeah.
those color
Yeah.
palettes, right? So and some of the logos that I've done, I kind of like when I get to do some of those vintage things. Like
Retro.
sometimes if somebody's doing like a 50-year whatever, and then you go back to something that's got more of a retro vibe to it. Yeah, it's kind of fun to explore those old design styles. But yeah, some people might want to just do a small tweak to their logo. So it's not that you have to go through a whole rebranding strategy. You might just like, you know what, I don't like this color anymore. And I think that the color is a sign of the time. So then they decide just to change that part up, right? But yeah, like a whole overhaul, like sometimes you could go 20 years, right? Like
Yeah.
it just kind of depends on how, like what you did to your logo, right? Like if you kept it too modern,
I always think of
then
the Christmas commercials with the Coca-Cola polar bears, right? The
yep,
evolution of that. It's very clear. And
yeah.
you see those change. I got to ask, is there any, you've been doing this a long time. Is there any really cool jobs that you did that stick out that you were like so excited to dig into and to create a logo or do a branding
I
piece?
think that when I first started, um, like so I've done a lot of work for Scotland over the years,
Yep.
and when I first started designing their trucks, getting to see, because it's so big and you'd see them driving down the road, and then you'd get people posting pictures on social media where the truck would be like in BC or California or something with mountains, and like that was cool. But I think that even when I first started hearing from like Hometown Brew, and I
Yep.
got to work for breweries, and that, like, it just felt really cool to start to see my work locally, and then obviously seeing it like far spread like that. But um honestly, for me, it's when I go around even just Norfolk and I can see so many businesses that I've helped, and that my kids get to see that I've done that, or we'll be out somewhere and there'll be a booklet, and like this event sponsored by, and it's like, oh, that's a logo that I did. Or just knowing that there's the piece of seeing my work out there, and there's the piece of knowing that I've helped that many people in my community. And I know
Yeah.
it's not like I'm helping them like solve the world's problems by any means, but I'm helping them to visually represent themselves so that they can serve people in their industry, right? So, or whatever it is that they're trying to offer. So
Well, and again, it boils back to that consistency. Then, if you're seeing that logo you created, they're doing a pretty good job. They're getting it out there at least, right? And
yeah.
that's one of the other last topics I want to sort of touch on is there's so many great logos, but sometimes when you hand it off to people, they don't understand how to take it to that next step and maybe market themselves with what you've created.
Mhm.
I think sometimes that happens. It falls through the cracks, right? You've got this great logo, but you've got to get it out there on all your social media and print ads and whatever on transport trucks if you can.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the other side of this, isn't it? Too. You can
Yeah.
make the best logo in the world, but
Well, and so if I do a brand for someone, I always include like a kind of, I don't know, like a cheat sheet, I guess, of the colors that they should be using to keep consistent. So,
oh,
because I know that not everybody has the budget to have somebody doing all of their stuff either, right? So they might be using Canva or something to create their own ads. So I give them at least a few tools to say, these are the fonts that
yeah,
I would suggest you use to keep your brand consistent. And these are the colors. And a lot of times, I do have a lot of repeat business where somebody's done their logo and then they've come to me to say, hey, can you just make a little ad for me that I'm going to put in the Maple Leaf or that I'm going to put on social media? Or even like I did the branding for Jordan Golly, like for the Capital 33.
yeah,
And it's like, so they took that 33 symbol and they like had it burnt into the bar and it's like on the
that's
wall and
cool.
like they had it on the napkins. And so, the people that they were working with too understood that like if you keep using that stamp on things like
Yeah, it resonates.
yeah. But I also do a lot of their event stuff too, right? So I can see the brand continue to evolve and maintain its consistency because I have a little bit of design control still on like the what's being put out there, right? But not everybody has the ability to have somebody doing all their posters and
Yeah.
marketing material, right? So I'm always available for questions. If people are like, hey, what do I do?
It's funny because I remember those early days thinking, well, I can do this. And then I do not have a color eye at all. I'm lucky my wife and my son do in that form because they can sort of take something that, you know, I remember they let me do the layout a couple times for the magazine. Only a couple times, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's not going. You can't put those colors like that, right? But I mean, you have such a gift and a skill. What would you tell? And you did mention your kids earlier, so I want to ask, what would you say to a young graphic designer coming out of school these days? What advice would you offer?
Oh, that's a good question. My earphone
You're
fell out. Um, my so my well, my best advice would be, I would say to get some experience, right? Like I think that some people think that, because I remember a number of times people saying to me, why don't you just have your own business? Why don't you just go out and do it on your own? And I'm like, because I think there's a lot to learn from other people in the industry and even just working with print shops and stuff, right? But like I told you, like I did pre-press after I did graphic design because
Yep.
I wanted to understand the process that happens after I'm done with something, right? So I think that so that would be one of the things I would say. I would also say not to get lost in like being the artist of it, right? Like getting to
Ah,
know you're designing for your client. You're not designing for your portfolio because there's going to be some that like maybe you made like maybe there was a color choice in the end that you wouldn't necessarily have picked, but it is what reflected them best. It's not what you were
reflects you.
maybe drawn, right? So and it still worked, right? Like it still had the effect that it should have. So I think sometimes designers design without thinking about that part in mind, right? Like that it's not just for your portfolio. And I think when you're fresh out of school, everything was for your portfolio, right? So
Right.
you've
Yes.
gotta remember that you're designing for someone else, and
You
that
you put your own ego aside, really.
yeah.
Your intent has to be um, controlled by what they want.
Yeah, like I remember when I worked at Annex Publishing that was the first ad I ever did, and it was for I think it was for the Garden Center magazine. Can't remember, but so I did the ad and I did something super trendy, And I remember Sue Frederick saying to
I
me,
remember Sue.
this ad would be great
Yeah.
in the florist magazine, but not in garden center. And I was like, okay, can you help me understand why my design choices didn't work for that trade? And
Yeah.
she was like, absolutely. And she really respected that I asked that
Yeah.
because I wanted to understand. And I was like, because to me, it just like, it looked like this beautiful floral trendy ad. So I wanted to understand why it didn't work for that trade publication and why it worked better for the other one,
Yeah.
so that I could help make the right design choices in the future. And I just remember her saying, like, she was surprised that I asked because I was new. And so she was like, it seemed like such a bold question to ask, but I was like, but I need to know because then I
Yeah.
can make the right design choices. And she was like, no, that, like, she really appreciated that. And so I think that, and that was me fresh out of school, right? So
You didn't get in a huff. You didn't
yeah,
stomp your feet
no,
and walk away. You went, okay, I need to learn from this. And we
yeah.
probably all need to do that more in life anymore, for
Yeah,
sure.
ask questions and take those answers and help yourself evolve as a better designer, right? Like, I think that's what makes you a better designer is knowing who it is. And maybe it's because I worked for 26 different trade publications when I worked there,
Yeah.
and each one you had to have a different hat. Like chiropractor ads look very different than firefighter ads, and so you have to reflect those trades properly, right? So
And because that's the moment you're in too. And I think that's great because as you went into your own business, you already had that built in, that
mhm,
piece of understanding what different magazines are going to require, or, in this age with more digital stuff, you're probably seeing that trend change things too, aren't you? Like
mhm,
you're like,
yeah.
okay, this digital ad would work over here, but it's not going to work in this
Well,
area.
and a lot of times, like, I still think, like, when I'm designing, I'm just designing because a lot of times, if they're printing it in the Port Over Maple Leaf or something where it's like going into print, or the Hub or
Yeah.
whatever, right? Like that, that they, oh no, let's change that, um,
Well, they have to
that
understand. Go ahead.
sorry, that they also could use that exact same ad
Right.
for digital use, right?
Right.
So whether you're email blasting it or you're posting it on a social media platform of some kind, or your website, like, it still has the same design elements. It should still have the same effect on whoever's viewing it. So for
Yeah.
me, it's less about whether it's being produced print or digital. There's obviously certain things you
Yeah.
wouldn't do if it's being printed because certain things don't print small, or if ink is bleeding and all that
Right.
kind of stuff, right? But yeah, the message is still the same.
Even when you break it down as a simple of it might be a black and white to a color ad, right?
Yes.
Things change dramatically, and you've got to be prepared, how that ad's going to look in that presentation and that
Yeah.
content. I think that's, one of the things that people look for. And we are such a visual society, right? Like
Yeah.
our attention span seems to be being shorter. So we're going to see something that's in front of us, if it's appealing, then we're going to look at it or look into it a little deeper. But it's such, and what you guys do, it makes all the difference in the world, especially when for businesses. And I'm going to promote you here, like get somebody that can do you a good ad, or whatever you're putting into whatever product, social media, whatever platform. It has to be done right because it like you said earlier, it represents you and your business. So take the time, spend the money, and do it right.
Yeah.
How do people
Thank
get a
you.
hold of you?
So I have Instagram, Facebook, both my name. And then my website is ksdesign.ca. So that's probably the easiest way because everything is linked from there. You can get
Yeah.
on my socials. You can email me. But yeah, that's usually the easiest way. And then
We
you can
got
also look at my portfolio.
we got to do this again sometime because it was a lot of fun, and I
Yeah.
really like. Now I'm like, oh, I want to go into the psychology of art, right? Because I think
Yeah.
you nailed something there, that I didn't really think about before we started this conversation. Because so much of what you do and a little bit of what we do here at the Hub is kind of related that way. You're looking at the people that you're talking to, right? And you're trying to make that a comfortable scenario where they can learn and grow from it. And that's the other part, the educational component that you can put into a logo, right, to help people go to that website to learn is incredible.
Thank you.
You guys are that first line. You guys make all the difference if they're going to
Oh,
click to that website or read that article. So greatly appreciate it.
thank
Thanks
you.
for doing this today.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.